Just like Alex, grilling season is back. And while our favorite team reloads, it's your turn to load up the grill with Martin Rosel's, the best meats Connecticut has to offer. Since 1928, Martin Rosel's has been crafting top quality hot dogs, kielbasa, and sausages using original recipes and only the finest ingredients. So as the warm weather returns, remember, both championship teams and great cookouts start with the right lineup. Look for Rosel's at your local grocery store or stop by their retail store in New Britain. And now, back to the episode. School is done for the school year here. So joining me to kind of put a bow on the UConn season is athletic director David Benedict. So David, thanks so much for hopping on again.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
So I mean, I guess let's just start with this one. It seems like across the board, I feel like every team at UConn had success this year. It seems like a real banner year for you guys.
Yeah, listen, really appreciative of the effort of all of our coaches and certainly the student athletes. I think, what can we do to top off years like this? And I think being in the position that we're in right now, there's an expectation almost across the board with every sport that we sponsor that we're competing for a championship going into the season, whether it be conference, regional, or national championship, which is, that's an exciting position to be in. Obviously, with football, 2 out of the last 3 years going to bowl games, and certainly next year, we have an expectation that we're going to build off of last year. So it's a great position to be in. Certainly makes the year go by even quicker because there's no time in between, and everyone's having success. So it's everything that you want to achieve. On top of that, the student athletes are achieving extremely well in the classroom, and we're continuing to graduate kids at a very high rate.
Yeah. No, all good stuff across the board, and I know there's a lot just going on in general in the college sports arena right now. So I figured pick your brain on some of that stuff while I've got you, and kind of move into some of those topics. I know the house settlement is the big thing on a lot of people's minds when they think of things, off the court, off the field, going on in college athletics right now. I know that's supposed to go into effect July 1st. I know nothing's quite settled yet. What are you hearing around where things stand on that when we're talking tonight? It's Monday, June 2nd at night here.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time. I guess it's kind of like one juggling about 12 different balls at the same time, hoping that you don't drop anything, and then it's a big puzzle. And the real challenging piece is as we sit here today and we're trying to plan for all of these things, whether it be revenue sharing, the change in rosters, whether that's going to be implemented in the way that they initially presented it, or it's going to change based on the things that are happening within the House case. Yeah, it's really important that we find out exactly how we're going to proceed. And while I appreciate the NCAA's position that nothing is formalized until the House is truly settled one way or the other, very difficult to plan when these are major changes that could be going into effect here in less than 30 days, and yet you're supposed to have plan A, plan B, plan C, and we're obviously scenario planning, but it's a challenge for all of our coaches and student athletes as well.
How does the athletic department change if it does change, given some of the kind of the proposed things being talked about in this settlement? Does the makeup of your team look any different? If this should go into effect?
Well, I mean, the biggest change year over year is with respect to House is just that you're going from an environment where it was driven primarily through what we refer to as name, image, and likeness, which was all required to be outside of any athletic director or athletic department or university involvement, to now having the ability to do both. And so the days of collectives as we knew them, there'll be some activity, but certainly our ability to directly share revenue with student athletes will change things significantly. And that requires a lot of different support and work through the administrative offices to put agreements together for all the athletes that will be participating in revenue sharing. How do you actually provide direct payment through an entity that is not necessarily built for this, because we have 600 student athletes, and we hope that the majority of them will participate in some way with revenue sharing and the department. So it again, it's a very interesting time, very dynamic, and requires a lot of juggling. But look, we've got a great team of people. We're all on the same page as it relates to what we're trying to accomplish. And, we just have to continue to preach patience with our coaches, which is really difficult to do because they're certainly trying to prepare for next year already. And we don't have all the answers for them. So, fortunately, we got a lot of experienced coaches that are very wise, and we'll do everything we can to put them in the best position so that they can put their programs in a position to compete and have success next year.
I know a lot of people listening or watching this, probably gotten confused at some point over these past couple of years with the changes. You hear name, image, and likeness. Now you hear revenue sharing. Can you just preview what the revenue sharing stage looks like to people who might not quite have a grip on what it all is going to look like going forward here?
Well, NIL was really, a free market situation where our student athletes could participate, in any way that they could create opportunities for themselves with the free market. Obviously, as we mentioned, the collectives were a more targeted approach to create resources to provide opportunities for student athletes, but ultimately, there was no limitations to NIL. There are limitations to revenue sharing. They created a formula that we have a cap of 20.5 million, which is, a significant amount of money when you're going from zero to potentially 20.5 million that you're allowed to share directly with your student athletes. The challenge is really how do you create that new revenue or reduce spending or a combination of both so that you have money to share with your student athletes in your program so that you can remain competitive.
Yeah. As you head towards this era of revenue sharing, I know there have been other conferences that have said, "Hey, I think the Big East is going to be a big beneficiary of this because they don't, have the football spend in particular." I know that's not how it is in UConn's case. How do you react when you hear some of those comments about maybe some of the schools in this conference kind of having a leg up compared to some of these other schools?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting concept to suggest that we have an advantage. I understand the practical rationale for that is that we don't have football competing at a Power Four level, which does reduce the market in which you're competing to build a football team, and obviously the majority of the Big East does not sponsor Division One football. We're the only member of the conference right now that's competing at the Division One level in football. There are a couple institutions that have Division Three, but ultimately you have to have the money. Yeah. And when you're starting at a place where your media rights are maybe 5 times, 10 times less than that of those conferences, that's where I kind of shrug my shoulders and say, how do we have an advantage when, we're getting somewhere, $5 to $10 million from our conference, and those conferences are, at a minimum of 40 and, potentially all the way up to 65 or 70 million. So, I take a little bit of umbrage and laugh a little bit when I hear that because, ultimately there's no advantage if you don't have the money.
Yeah, no, agreed. How much of a challenge has it been as you think and plan towards the future of getting that money and being able to, fill that cap of up to the 20.5 million there?
Well, look, I think generally speaking, it's really difficult. And it's difficult for even the big schools, even though they're starting with much larger budgets. Most of your athletic departments around the country are starting at a place where, whether you call it a subsidy or you call it a deficit, most athletic departments are not turning a true profit in the way that we would think of a true P&L. And so everyone's going to be challenged to create the revenue to support this new opportunity of revenue sharing. But at the end of the day, we couldn't be hitting it at a better time. And what I mean by that is, look, we are having success across the board. The sports that have the best opportunity to generate revenue are either at a place where we're generating revenue at an all-time high, or like in football's case, we're certainly on the upswing. There's a lot of opportunity to create new revenue from football, which we'll reinvest right back into football, because the more we invest, the more success we're going to have, and ultimately the more revenue we're generating. So, look, we couldn't be in a better position as it relates to taking this new challenge on, but with all that being said, it'll still be a challenge. And that's why, in some of the communications that I've sent out over the last several months, we have to continue to find new ways. And I know a lot of your fans and a lot of your time is spent on talking about basketball. And I believe there was another game that was released with Illinois today,
Yep.
or recently at MSG. And, we've talked a lot about, how we're reshaping our basketball schedule. And, there's probably multiple reasons for that. I think if you reflect back on Coach Hurley's comments after the Maui Invitational, him talking about not necessarily wanting to participate in those events, there's a competitive aspect to that, and how you approach building your team, and the fact that today it's more difficult because you're introducing a lot more new athletes as a part of your program because of the transfer portal. But from my perspective, the opportunity that exists to play in those types of events, while they will still be present for a program like UConn, the financial opportunity is not there, and it's not worth us spending the money to travel to these places, which is quite expensive when you talk about chartering a plane to go to Maui. The actual costs when you're in places like Maui or the Bahamas or other places like that are quite expensive, and you're getting very little return for 3 games. Mm-hmm. So if we can put together games that are, at home or local, where we get paid a significant amount of money to play in those events, we minimize our expenses because we're not getting on an airplane to travel. The change in that from a P&L standpoint is quite significant. So, we, as you've seen, we're building a schedule with that in mind. And I'm glad that in this case, which is not always the case, that it fits, what Coach Hurley is looking for. Mm-hmm. But it also fits what we need, which is to maximize our revenue opportunities. And when you're selling out games on a consistent basis, especially against great competition, it puts us in a position where we can generate significantly more resources to help support the need that we have to share revenue.
It's almost as if you had a look at my notepad that I've got in front of me, because scheduling was next on my list as we jumped from the house, revenue sharing, all that stuff. So
I promise you I didn't see your notes.
I'm curious from a scheduling perspective, especially from a basketball perspective, as we're talking about these changes there. How much of, when it comes to scheduling, is it you in the department versus, the coaching staff working to try to set up these games and how they come about?
Yeah, football, and I'm sure your listeners will be interested in this.
Yeah.
Football and basketball are totally different in the approach to scheduling. Football is done, 3, 4, 5, 6 years
Several
out,
years, yeah.
and that's primarily done administratively. Basketball has traditionally been done by the coaches, and most of the time it's done, a year or two in advance. Obviously, if you schedule a home and home, that equates to 2 years. And we have, a couple of those that we've announced, and we're working on another one that I think people will be very excited about. But the Texas and Arizona game are, 2-year agreements. But the majority of the scheduling happens, much, much quicker. And we're scheduling next year, probably, less 8 to 12 months out. And so it makes it a little bit more challenging. And quite frankly, I think we all would be better off if we are a little bit further out. But, things change significantly year to year in basketball because of the transfer portal. And, when you're building a football team of 100 plus student athletes, there's a little bit more consistency or idea on what a team is going to look like year to year. Where in basketball, you can change your competitiveness year to year in a much more significant way. And building a basketball schedule is, there's an art and a science to it, as it relates to the timing of the games as well as the competitiveness of them. And I know that sometimes our fans look at the schedule and, they may want something different, but the reality is we have to schedule in a way that is going to put us in the best position, be it us getting an AQ because we win the conference championship, or we build a schedule that can provide us a high seed, because ultimately our goal is to compete and make deep runs into the NCAA tournament, and having a high seed is critical in accomplishing that. So we build the schedule in a way that is going to allow the best opportunity for us competitively, so that we can achieve a high seed. But we're now focused very much also on how much revenue we can maximize out of every opportunity.
You love your car, but does it love you back? Introducing the Fasten Rewards Visa Card. With the Fasten card, you get rewarded for all your auto-related spending, including monthly car loan or lease payments. That's 3 times points when you shop with Fasten partners, 2 times points on car payments, gas, tolls, insurance, car washes, and 1 times point on everything else. Stack up rewards and turn them into travel, cash, gift cards, maintenance, or even a down payment on your next car. Founded by a Yukon fan. Apply now at fasten.cc/apply and buckle up for rewards. The Fasten Rewards Visa Card is powered by High Note and issued by Celtic Bank, pursuant to a license by Visa USA Inc. All cards are subject to credit approval. Terms and conditions apply. Rewards are subject to change. Visit fasten.cc/legal for full program details. Sure, if I were to dive into your Twitter mentions, probably when it comes to scheduling, the home and home is the biggest question you get. From when you first started, it seems like the trend, just across the sport in general, has been to move a lot of non-conference games to neutral sites. Has it become harder? Have you seen it become harder to schedule these home and homes in this era of college basketball right now?
Well, I would say that in some ways, Jared, there's a lot of people that are beginning to approach things as we are. And so there might even be a little bit more opportunity right now. But as I mentioned in one of my posts recently, if you think about the bigger conferences, and unfortunately the Big East lost both of our challenges. So we had a challenge game with the Big 12 and a challenge game with the Big Ten. Unfortunately, we never got to participate in the Gavitt games, but there were 2 of those on the book, so that provided you a guarantee of a couple high major games, one typically at home and one on the road. Those don't exist for us anymore. But if you look at a slate of 31 games, and most people are playing around 12 non-conference games, with and when you take 12 non-conference games, most high majors are scheduling probably 6 high major games.
Mhm.
And so if you play in an MTE, that's 3 games.
Yeah.
You have a couple challenge games, which most of the power conference have.
Mhm.
That's 1 game left.
Right.
and
Yeah.
and so it's not so much that no one wants to play home and homes. It's just when you look at the availability that you have to schedule games like that, there's not a lot there. And so a neutral site is a way to guarantee a good game, but at the same time, it creates a situation where if you do a home and home and you only have 1 game to play with, 1 year you're going to be on the road and 1 game you're going to be at home. And, for the most part, coaches don't like having that unbalanced situation. So that creates the opportunity for neutral sites. But, the neutral sites, just like the MTEs, are beginning to catch up with the times and understand that they're going to have to pay a lot more to get the great games. And we've had success here recently over the last couple of years. And if you look at the Illinois game and the BYU game, those are great situations for us. They're one-off games. And they're a drive away for our fans, MSG and the Garden in Boston. And so there's really not a lot of downside
Yeah.
for us in being able to schedule those kinds of games. And the BYU game in particular, it's a 1 game situation. We're going to get compensated very well, and we're going to play in an area where we have a lot of alums and fans. And so it's a really good situation for us, and we don't have to return it. So we don't have to go out to the West Coast. And so those are great opportunities for us. We're going to continue to pursue those. But now that we're not playing the MTE,
Yeah.
it frees up 3 games that really allows us to focus on some great home and homes that we can create, that we know our fans really enjoy.
Yeah. So we'll go from talking about the scheduling of some of these basketball games and just talk about where these games are being played. And I know there's been some changes to both arenas, both as of a couple hours ago now, People's Bank Arena in Hartford and in Gampel. I'm sure you have some more insight into the renovations and all that are going on at Gampel. What can fans expect when they show up in, November to see an updated Gampel and maybe People's Bank? I'm not sure how much insight you have into what they've been doing, but at least on the Gampel side.
Yeah, on Gampel, you're not gonna walk in and say, "Oh my gosh, look how different this looks." I mean, we're replacing the original seats, which now it's over 30 years old, Gampel, and so those lower level seats needed to be replaced. We didn't have any handrails, which, for anyone that really pays attention to how people are walking up and down those stairs, I mean, I've gotten up countless number of times to help people and give people a hand as they're traversing the stairs. And we don't want to have any. We don't want anyone to have any accidents as they're coming and going in Gampel. And it was really important that we update the lower level and make it as safe as possible for people. And we're excited about that. I know we're going through a little pain right now because we're having to do reseating, which please understand that reseating is the last thing that any of us want to go through, which is why we eliminated the whole reseating process that we were doing annually when I arrived. So we look forward to getting through that. We're going to try to take care of everyone the best we possibly can. We are creating a second row of floor seats, which will provide new opportunities for premium seating, which will also create new revenue for us, which again is very helpful at the time. At Excel or now the People's Bank Arena, that I don't have as much insight, but they are doing a much larger renovation this year. And so when people do come in November to People's Bank Arena, it will look a lot different. There will be a complete transformation of the lower bowl, in my opinion. And I got a chance because I was at the unveiling of the new naming rights today at what is now People's Bank Arena. And I will tell you, which is really important, our fans aren't going to necessarily appreciate it as much, but the amenities, the spaces for our student athletes, we now will all be consolidated into one area, where before men's and women's basketball shared a couple spaces,
Okay.
and then hockey was in a different area. Now we're all going to be in one place. And so regardless of what team it is, when we go, we're all sharing the same spaces, and they are significantly upgraded. I would tell you that, walking into the locker room area today, it reminds me a lot of what we have when we're at MSG, but we're in the Knicks
Okay.
locker room. I would say it's as good or better than the Knicks locker room. It's a big round locker room area with all the lockers, so everyone can see each other. It's really nice. The coach's space, you got a film room, you got some social areas. So if guys are eating any meals pregame or postgame, there's places to do that. They've got hydrotherapy there. It's just significantly better, and that is really important for us, because we all know that playing off campus is not necessarily what we want to do, but if we're going to do it, we want to come to a place where people feel really good about what they're experiencing. And I can tell you, I really am appreciative of Oakview Group and the CRDA, because when we told them initially, when we were looking at the plans, and there was all of these changes throughout the building, and we were still in the same exact areas that we had been, with really no plans to change anything, that was not acceptable to me. And I do appreciate the fact that they heard us, and they made a significant investment in enhancing what the experience is going to be back of house for our coaches and our student athletes. So we're super excited about that. I'm really looking forward to seeing our student athletes and coaches experience those facilities for the first time.
Nice. It seems like both arenas should have some nice fresh looks to them come the fall there. Got a couple just miscellaneous ones as I go down my list of things I have. I know a lot of people weren't thrilled, unfortunately, with the result of baseball getting left out of the NCAA tournament field. How do you think the Big East can kind of go about improving the kind of the image of the league from a baseball standpoint as you look towards future years and trying to get multiple bids?
Yeah, look, I wish I could sit here and tell you and tell the fan base that is achievable, or that there's some path to be able to do that. But ultimately, the majority, really all of the Big East membership is playing in what I would say is challenging geographic environments, and so we're not going to be able to change that. And so the only way to really enhance things across the board is to invest, because in this marketplace, you got to have great coaches, you got to have great players, and I would say it's going to be challenging for our Big East membership to support other sports beyond basketball, and this goes back to that concept of us having an advantage. I think the Big East obviously is focused on making sure that we stay nationally competitive in basketball. So the majority of the resources are going to go there. And then every institution, every member of the Big East has its sports that have traditionally and had historical success. And so it's not the same on every campus on what the next priority would be to invest from a revenue sharing standpoint. And so, look, we're a little bit unique in the fact that we're trying to continue to compete across the board in all of our sports. I'm not sure that is everyone's mentality or priority within the Big East. And so, it's really what UConn can do. And so I can't really worry or depend on the rest of the conference to enhance our situation. We have to just continue to focus on UConn baseball. Coach Penders, as you know, and our fan base knows, is one of our best and most successful coaches that we have. He continues to produce unbelievable results with limited resources and a very difficult situation relative to being a Northeastern team. I mean, we traveled 8 weeks this year before we ever had a home series, and that was particularly challenging because this is probably the least amount that our baseball program has been able to get out
Mhm.
on the field in preseason, because the weather, as we all know, was, it was, I don't want to say it was brutal, but it was the most challenging from a weather standpoint. Usually we've been able to find times to get out, but it was really cold this winter. And so between the weather, between having to travel 8 weeks in a row, it just made this year difficult. But even with all that being said, coach and the team put themselves in a position where we actually had a better RPI this year going into the selection show than we did the previous year, and we didn't get in. And for those people that have been following the baseball tournament thus far, there's been a lot of upsets, and I think there was probably some overvaluing of particular conferences or particular programs in a way that kept us out. And that's certainly disappointing for us, especially when you look back and going into this year. We have been to 2 super regionals in the last 3 years. We were
Yeah.
1 game away 3 years ago now from going to the College World Series. And so you'd like to think that, when things are close, you would consider the historical success that we've had here again in an environment where you don't get to play home games
Yeah. No.
early in the year, which makes it that much more difficult. And the non-conference is really, really important, which is why Coach Pender schedules such a challenging non-conference. And, although, we didn't have as much success as we would have liked to in the non-conference, we still beat Vanderbilt. We beat North Carolina. We took a series from Miami. And so, we just got to keep focused on what we can control. And ultimately, we got to do everything we can to win the conference tournament, because that gives you the automatic and it eliminates the potential that you get left out.
Yeah. I got to just a quick one here as we get ready to wrap here. I know there's a lot of talk of over the next couple months, maybe the men's NCAA tournament gets expanded from a basketball perspective. Are you a yes or no on tournament expansion there?
Yeah, look, access is great. The NCAA basketball tournament is certainly one of the greatest sporting events historically that we have in our country. And so, if we can expand in a way that doesn't take away from that and doesn't necessarily water down the experience and how the fans perceive or the student athletes perceive the tournament, then I'm all for it. But there's a lot of other nuances that will go into that decision. One is revenue.
Yeah.
Is there enough money that is going to be driven from media to support the additional games? Because I don't think anyone will be supportive if you add games and it actually reduces the amount of money that's being distributed. And that's not a guarantee. And so all of these different things are being worked through. How many additional teams? How do you stage the first games that are kind of the play-in games? Do you just increase the play-in games? And there's conversations that they're going to take a lot of the AQs that come from the lower conference, programs, and they're going to all play in the play-in games, which would remove or eliminate the Power Four teams that wind up as an 11 seed that have to play in a play-in. And so there's a lot of nuances to this, Jared, that I'm not necessarily at the table for.
Yeah.
But I would just leave it as, look, if we can enhance the tournament and the experience for the fans and the student athlete, and at the same time create more revenue, then I'm a supporter for it.
All right, I'll wrap with this one for you. We're almost to the first day of summer here. If anyone's coming up to campus, what's your go-to flavor at Dairy Bar to get this summer?
Oh man, I haven't been to the dairy bar recently, which there that's probably one just because I'm busy, and two because I'm trying to cut back on that kind of stuff. But um, I Husky Tracks is always
Yeah.
a great one. I did not get to experience. I know I think they created a couple special flavors for Gino and CD. I didn't get to try either one of those. I don't know if they're still around, but look, the dairy bar is an experience that everyone should take in when they're coming to stores. It's especially now that hopefully the weather begins to turn, so to get out on a little bit of a warm spring or summer afternoon and go grab a scoop of whatever flavor you might like. They're all good. Um, it's a good thing. And look, I still I can take credit for the fact that we do, instead of just doing your traditional dessert cart, in the suites during football, we have the dairy bar cart now. And so
Okay.
we bring in a bunch of different flavors, and there's all the different toppings. And while I was the individual that said, "Hey, everyone loves the dairy bar. Like, why aren't we serving
Yeah.
dairy bar ice cream for dessert as opposed to some cake that who knows where it came from?" I a lot of times I'm saying, "Hey, where is the dairy bar cart?" Because everyone's waving on it, but there's a lot of people that are enjoying that at around the third, fourth quarter break of
Yeah.
our football games, and it's a lot better when you're winning. So dairy
Definitely.
bar plus a win at the rent equals a very good time.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate the time and enjoy the summer, and we'll have to have you back on as we get closer to fall to talk football and all that fun stuff as we get ready to kick off another school year. But for now, enjoy the summer, and thanks again for the time.
Yeah, well, hey, Jared, look, to you and everybody else that supports our programs in different ways, we truly appreciate your interest, your support, and just how committed you are in trying to create content that our fans enjoy. And I'm sure you're very happy that AK is going to be around for one more year, and
Oh
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
continue that segment.
Yeah. We'll have some fun coming up this season on that. I was certainly excited by that.
I'm sure all of our fans are for various reasons, but I'm happy that you'll be able to continue doing that with AK because it's great stuff, and he's
Thanks.
obviously one of our best, and now that he's coming back, not that he wouldn't have, he's got a chance to go down as one of the all time greats
Yeah,
at UConn, so we're truly excited about that.
for sure. Well, thank you again, and enjoy the summer.
All right, Jared, thank you.